Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to the Beyond the Wire podcast. I am your host, Tim Keller, and thankfully I'm here, and along with me is my co-host, Mr. Matt Disher. How are you doing today, sir?
I am apparently doing better than you are, Tim. My power didn't go out. That's why we're 15 minutes late.
Yeah. We had to push back an hour. We had some overlaps on some schedules, so we pushed back to 2 p.m. I think it was 1:57, and black. Everything went out. As I was going in the house to see if the rest of the house was out of power, the wife let me know that the neighbors are also out of power. So it was a wide-ranging thing. I'm assuming some squirrel is fried in the substation somewhere locally. So RIP.
At least they got it turned back on.
Yeah, it flipped back over pretty quick. The power was on, but then you have to reset the router, and yeah, it's just a whole thing. And I'll be honest, I had this written down in my notes about how IT tech itself, it's passing me by. I got home today. My three kids and my niece and nephew, they all do the homeschooling thing here virtually. Somebody needs something printed. My wife couldn't figure it out. Literally, I feel like 10 years ago, snapping my fingers, I would have had it done. I was messing around for probably 15 minutes trying to get this daggone paper to print. And I'm thinking, I'm getting too old. This text just flying right by me. I'll be honest with you there. But we have a fantastic guest. Mr. Brian Link is joining us today on the podcast. So how are you, Brian?
Doing well, man. Doing a little bit better than you. I did not have any type of technical difficulties, but I do feel your pain there with tech, man. So I feel like, 10, 15 years ago, I was like, why can't older people figure this out? Now I'm like, why can't I figure this out?
Yeah. well, literally, I jumped on and was on for maybe a minute, 2 minutes, and we were all kind of discussing little technical difficulties we were having. Matt was having trouble having us hear him. Brian was having trouble hearing us.
I was moving my microphone around.
Yeah. And I was literally getting ready to say the past 3 weeks when we've logged on, I've had the incorrect speakers chosen, and I'll come in and Matt will say hi to me and it screams through the speaker I have over, and I'm, we're just, it's getting rough. It's getting rough at old age. I'll tell you that. So as we like to do every week, we bring up some news off of military.com. I've got a couple articles pulled up here. Now, we spoke about Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller just a few weeks ago. Matt, you said he went to your high school. Is that right?
Yeah, we were a year apart. So he graduated a year after I did. There were not many people that graduated from my high school that went into the Marine Corps. So the 3 or 4 of us that were in that age range around each other in graduating classes kind of know each other or know of each other. But I think he arguably stayed in the military the longest.
Yeah. Now, if you don't know of any of this story or some of the background, but Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller was making social media posts demanding accountability for the failures in Afghanistan and things of that nature. He did put forth a resignation from his Marine Corps career. Now, the Marine Corps, as I understand it, doesn't have to accept this. They don't have to accept your resignation. So, over these past few weeks, he has maintained his position in the Marine Corps and continued to post things on social media, despite the fact that he was given a gag order. So I want to say it was Thursday, maybe Friday of last week, the news broke that Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller was being put into the Brig, the military prison system. Mm-hmm. Since that has happened, there have been multiple lawmakers. I want to say it was over 30 lawmakers wrote a letter to the Marine Corps Commandant asking for Scheller's release. The letter argued that the Brig sentence appears to simply be messaging, retribution, and convenience. So this article here does talk about his defense, thinks he's got a good chance to walk away with possibly still an honorable discharge here. But the gentleman, when we spoke about this a few weeks ago, we said this gentleman, you don't get to be a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps by being a dummy. He knew what he was doing. He knew what this could possibly cost him. He knew that this was a possible outcome as well. But I think that in his heart, he was doing the right thing by standing up and saying, hey, there were some major failures here that we need to make sure we're going to be held accountable for. So going forward, these certain things don't happen again. So I'm fighting with him here.
This is we talked about that. We've talked about this for a handful of episodes on here. that there's two ways to look at this, and I've been following the threads, and I'm friends with his mom on Facebook. They live, 2 exits down the highway, or he grew up 2 exits down the highway from where I live now. And she's been very active in having this conversation with lawmakers, and her and Stu's father have been on and off the media, on and off the news for whichever news stations would pick up the story. This is the thing. There are certain news stories or news stations that are not picking it up. I don't know if that's for partisan reasons or not. When I look at this, it's not a partisan issue. It's a military leadership issue. I can't comment on whether it's a failure issue or if it's an accountability issue. I guess it is an accountability issue. But at any rate, I've seen two sides of this. One, the people who support Stu in his ability to, or his, I don't want to call it a right, because in the military, you kind of give up some of those constitutional rights. You're not allowed to go out and do whatever you want to do. And he knew that, by the way, as you mentioned, Tim. He knew that there would be repercussions for his actions, because that's how the armed forces treats it. On the second note, when we raise our children, when we're raising my son, I tell him to be honest. I tell him to speak the truth, even if he's trembling. I tell him to stick up for the people who need to be stuck up for, to protect the innocent, to protect the weak, to fight for things that he believes in. And those are probably values that you teach everybody. Everybody's children are taught that, or at least I hope that we're teaching our children that. But more than that, in the armed forces, especially with officers, they are taught to do the right thing, to look at this, their service as constitutional, to protect the Constitution of the United States, and to speak up when things are unlawful, et cetera, et cetera. Did he take the illegal path in voicing those opinions? Absolutely. And he knew he did. And he knew he was breaking the rules. However, let's go back in history and let's look at, of course, every conversation when we're talking about the military. Every conversation goes back to like Nazi Germany. There were multiple attempts on Hitler's life by his own officers, and not that this is an extreme situation like that, but the purpose of that lesson is that people didn't like what was happening in that administration back then, and they tried to push back, and they were silenced. And that is, I think, the larger argument here. Did he go about it the right way? Is he right? Time will tell. History will tell. But I do think that at any rate, we have to make sure that we are holding leadership accountable. The United States is run by the people. This is it's not an organization that was put together where it's a bunch of shareholders and everybody else has to be quiet. So military officer or civilian, the thing is that had he gone through the appropriate channels with this grievance, he would have been silenced and probably discharged from the military. And those of us who have served, we know that. So there's not a right or wrong answer. There's a morally right or wrong question and answer here, but it's not a right or wrong answer. It's not a this side or that side type of thing. It's just sort of, let's let this play out and let's hear what happens.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember when I first saw that video, and I knew exactly what could have happened to him whenever I saw that video. And I got thinking, I was like, wow, he knows exactly what he's doing. And there's no doubt about it. And so, like, when I go down this road and talk about this on this type of forum, I got to be careful because I still have a status.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand what he was saying. I understand where he was coming from on it. And I understand also how putting him in the brig, how that doesn't look necessarily the best on the military, even
Right.
though they're well within their right to do so. I guess I want to say the audience of public opinion out there, whenever they see what happens, then it gives a black eye to the Marine Corps, unfortunately. And they're fully within the right to do whatever it is that they're doing with them. So I just think it presents an interesting situation. I think this is the first time we really had a situation like this, to where somebody's trying to speak out, utilizing social media in this avenue that he has, and
Right.
doing it in the way in which he has done it, and the military then utilizing whatever is within their full rights to be able to do, and having
Right.
a backlash from the public. So
And frankly, the fact that he has been punished and thrown in the brig is probably giving this more. Had they just said, "Hey, yeah, let's have a conversation about it," the whole thing would have been brushed under the rug. The media never would have picked it up. It's almost like the reaction to it has now presented a larger problem than perhaps what it was in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to also note, though, as we talk about these situations and these incidents, it is not lost on me that the reason why Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller went onto social media to kind of shake his fist. I'm sure it's been a number of things that he's seen over the years. He spent 17 years in the Marine Corps, but it's also because 13 people lost their lives, perhaps unnecessarily. They weren't fighting in combat. They were guarding a gate. And it was during an apparently botched evacuation of Afghanistan. Again, this is not, I've seen all the conversations on social media about this. It's not meant to be partisan. The leadership didn't stand in the right place, perhaps. And if they did, and this was there were multiple conversations about this for months and months, fine, let that come out. But they are doing an investigation on it now too. Not on his comments, but on the withdrawal in the evacuation of Afghanistan. And so that presents a different issue when you spend effort to try to silence the people that may be raising the questions. You're drawing more attention to the problem. You're drawing more attention. You're getting more people involved, and now everybody wants to know what's going on here.
Yeah, that thing you wanted to keep everybody's eyes and ears off of has now become their main focus.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. So.
It's they're not hiding in plain sight, I guess, that's probably the best way to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. So our next article here comes. It's little tips from Warren Buffett. So if you didn't know, Warren Buffett is the 5th richest person in the United States. So Warren Buffett now owns Berkshire Hathaway, one of the biggest real estate companies in the world. But he got his start by selling bubble gum, golf balls, magazines back in the day to just anybody who would buy them. He actually filed his first set of taxes at the age of 14, along with deductions. So Mr. Buffett, at the age of 21, joined the National Guard in Nebraska, and he has 4 life lessons that he learned from his time while serving. So number 1 was taking orders. In a 2020 interview with the Nebraska National Guard, Warren Buffett said, "Well, I learned to take orders, which is not a bad trait to acquire." The story goes that when Mr. Buffett was getting wed to his wife back in 1952, his local commander gave him a call. Apparently there's some flooding in the state. He let him know, "Hey, I understand you're having your wedding today. Enjoy your wedding. You got about 2 hours, and then I'm going to need you to come on in."
In your tuxedo.
Yeah.
Get in here. We need you to fill sandbags.
In your tuxedo and your shiny shoes. Come on in, and we're going to put you right to work. About 30 minutes later, the general called in and told him, "Hey, we understand. Have a good time at your wedding. Don't bother coming on in." So that worked out. But yeah, he said he was all set. He was going to spend the next 2 hours enjoying his wedding and dancing with his wife, and then rush off to hopefully save some people from some flooding. But that is a commitment to taking orders.
That's awesome, because he was Corporal Buffett. He's a lowly E4, right? And the general called him and told him to stay at his wedding. That's a story that belongs. If you've ever heard the General Mattis Christmas story, where he relieved a young officer from duty on Christmas morning. Yeah. And then somebody asked who the duty officer was that one day, and they're like, "It's General Mattis." And the commandant of the Marine Corps or somebody was calling, like, "No, it's not General Mattis. It has to be some lieutenant." And it's like, they're like, "No, sir, it's General Mattis. He has duty today." It's a story. It's a real thing that actually happened. I'd like to know who this general was. It was General Wood, who called Corporal Buffett and said, "Enjoy your vacation, son. We'll handle it from here."
Yeah, we got those sandbags. Don't worry about it. Well, since we're kind of on the topic, it wasn't the commandant necessarily calling, but Brian, you have a story where you were on duty once and you got a pretty high-level phone call that you probably just chalked up to somebody playing a prank.
Right. So, during my time, I spent a lot of time in recruiting command. And at this point, I happened to be at the MEPS, working at the MEPS as one of the guidance counselors in the National Guard liaison in Kansas City. And so we had a really busy day, one of those days where you just needed everything to happen right. And I get this phone call, and the guy says on the other end, "Hey, this is Lieutenant Colonel Ross, East Wing of the White House. I'm trying to coordinate Michelle Obama coming to Kansas City." And I just cut him off. It's like, "Hey, listen, man, I ain't got time for jokes today. We're busy. What do you need help with? Let me get you on, with whatever you need help with." And he's like, no, this is Lieutenant Colonel Ross. I'm like, "Hey, apparently you didn't hear me the first time, Joe. Like, I don't have time for your joke. So tell me what you need or I'm going to hang up on you." He's like, "Well, give me your email address and I'll email you." So I gave him my email address, thinking, who's this new guy that doesn't have my email address? I'm the MEPS GC. Like, this is stuff that he should be in from his NCOIC. I hang up the phone. Literally not within 2 seconds, here comes the email: "Lieutenant Colonel Ross, East Wing of the White House." And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I just really stuck my foot in my mouth on this one. So I picked the phone back up. I call his number. I was like, listen, sir, I was like, I want to apologize. Can we start back over? Because whenever you said White House, I stopped listening to you. What do you need? And so he was the coolest guy about it. So he told me, he's like, listen, he's like, dude, he's like, try to buy a house when you work here. Even the bank don't believe you. He's like, I really thought this was going to be the coolest job when I took it. He's like, every time I call somebody, telling them where I'm calling from, nobody believes me. He's like, it's the worst job ever.
That's amazing. I do the same thing. I hang up in the White House all the time whenever they call me.
Right.
Obviously. While we're on the topic, this reminds me of when the story goes, Dakota Meyer, the Marine that won the Medal of Honor for a major gun battle in Afghanistan a number of years ago. I guess he was at work and the president or the White House called him at work. And he basically was like, I'll have to call you back because I'm in the middle of working on a vehicle or something like that. He was working on like a tractor or a bulldozer or something and was just kind of like, he's in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky. Like, I don't care. I'll call you back later on. Wow. And basically brushed them off. He was receiving the Medal of Honor and they were calling him to tell him that. And he just kind of was like,
I got to get the tracks back on my dozer.
Right. I'm in the middle of something right now. I'm emptying the dishwasher. Can you guys call me back in a half an hour?
Feeding the dogs.
Yeah.
Right.
I ain't got time for this.
Yeah.
But think about all the phone calls you get on a daily basis. If you answered all the spam calls and somebody was like, it's the White House, I'd be like, no, it's not.
It's the White House. You go, really? Your car's extended warranties, but dang it, you got me. Ah.
And it's right. It's the president calling. It's their voice.
Yeah.
Tim, you did a really good Donald Trump before.
Oh, you got to totally do that again, dude.
Yeah, where Donald would go in and try to sell you on the extended warranty. Listen, I know your car's extended warranty is never good. I have something that's fantastic. Now, when Brian told us he hung up on the White House, I was asking what administration it was from because, and like he said, it was Michelle Obama trying to coordinate her trip to Kansas City. So it was during the Obama administration, but Matt immediately brought up the fact that if it was Trump, he'd have sat there and been like, what do you mean he hung up? And then we'll call him back. And Brian went, hello, listen here, you're fired. You're fired.
I know everybody thinks you did a terrible job. Everybody thinks it.
Yeah. You're fired. I said you're terrible. Everybody agrees. You're just terrible. You're probably ugly. You're fired.
That's when one of these days when we have Donald Trump on the show, we'll ask him how he would have handled that situation.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean,
it's
going to be a race between the Joe Rogan.
We should get that set up for next week, there, Matt.
Well, I could. Yeah. I mean, well, that's what Tim was saying. We're constantly competing. We're not competing. What were you saying, Tim? Sorry.
I was saying it's kind of between us and the Joe Rogan podcast.
Trump's
weighing his options. You know,
obviously.
I mean, Joe called us the other week and was like, "Hey, if you guys are interested, Elon's expressed interest." Elon, like Elon, and he's like Elon Musk. I'm like, what?
Never
what's
heard
her
of
name again? I don't.
Yeah. That name doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, I don't know who this Elon girl is. I don't know.
Yeah.
He starts electric cars or something. I don't know what he was saying.
That reminds me, there was a. I know we're way off topic now, and we only got through number one on Warren Buffett's list. But that reminds me of a few years ago when Elon Musk and his girlfriend or his wife or fiance, whatever they are, her name is Grimes, had a baby, and Elon said, like, they named the child some outrageous name, and Elon said something to the media like, "Well, she's the one that's really good with names," and I'm like, bro. She calls herself Grimes.
Yeah, I forget what the child's name was.
I don't remember.
Do remember seeing it, and it was. I mean,
it was something outrageous. Yeah, I don't remember either. But
it was really long, is all I remember, and I was like, "Oh wow, I can't even say that." Wow.
Yeah, okay. I was like, not trying that one. So.
You know, funny thing about Warren Buffett's number one on there about taking orders. So, like the day I got married, the next day I had to leave and go to training for 3 weeks, and so. The funny story about that is I left at like 4 a.m. to make it to the training site on time to be there so I could actually do the training we needed to do. And I had to call back to my wife at noon because I realized I left my badge in my daggone uniform. Or not uniform, but my tuxedo. And so at the time I was a state trooper. And so I called her up and it's like, hey, did you remember to take my badge out of my pocket? She's like, why did you have your badge in your pocket? And I was like, well, because I had my gun on me. why did you have your gun on you? And I was like, well, because it was cool getting married with my gun on me. And to do that, I needed my badge.
Very, very.
So she had to go back to the tuxedo shop and get my badge back. So, yeah.
Hey, I just returned to Tux. It's probably got like a police badge in it.
Yes. And they're like, sir, why is there a badge in the pocket? And you're like, because I have my gun on me.
Yes,
and
exactly.
They're like, everybody's panicking. You like some woman in the background screams and runs out. He's got a gun.
Right.
Yeah. So let's
number two.
Let's get back on the tracks here. Yeah, number 2 from Warren Buffett's list of life lessons he learned while serving in the military. Number 2 is having fun. So now, famously, Buffett is a very modest man. He lives well within his means. He doesn't own private islands. His money goes towards his investments and building, this incredible nest egg he's built for himself. But he's saying that having fun comes along with anytime you make good, long friendships, that's important in life. So obviously anybody that's ever been in the service, be it just through boot camp, you meet people in your basic training that you're going to have lifelong relationships with. Once you're in the fleet or, out there in the Air Force or in the Army, you are serving with people, you're living with people, you're eating with people, you're training with these same people, and you make these incredible bonds. So he said there is something about the spirit of a company. I mean, people that you did things with, slept in the same barracks and everything, that is actually, it really has a good effect on you. So yeah, Warren Buffett has made lifelong friends while serving in the Army. Personally, I think I'd kind of be upset with myself. Like, hey man, here's this guy who's going to go on to be a billionaire. I should have just kind of followed him around and where you putting your money at? Do something like that.
I would love to know. I would love to spend an hour with Warren Buffett and just understand. I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. By the way, it's not his book, but I read that book a few years back. And if you've never read that book and you want to know about money and you want your mindset changed on how cash works, read that book. But I read that book and I realized, man, I would love to talk to somebody who's money smart, because I learned so much from reading that quick book. Warren Buffett's one of those people. But at any rate, what we're talking about here, having fun and the people you meet, and I think that the longer effect of that is, as a leader, you have to be. He's an influential person. He didn't get there by not being a leader, by not being an attractive personality, and that's people leadership 101. Is people want to have to follow you, and you get that from making people feel important and being able to develop teams and getting people. You can ask people what the definition of management is, and people will be like, well, it's getting people to do things, and okay, but it's ultimately like influencing people's habits to work toward a common goal. I know there's a lot of leadership definitions, but you have to be to that point. You have to be able to like make friends and have good experiences, have a little bit of fun, and take those things with you and have that really good effect.
Yeah, I think we could all look back on our career and find some areas where we had a lot of fun doing things with people. Yeah. So, and those people are still talking to you today. So,
right. I mean, Tim and I are a product of that. We lived in the barracks during a hurricane. What do we call them?
Typhoons.
A typhoon.
Typhoon over there. Yeah.
Power goes out. People are jumping off the third deck stairwell with ponchos and trying to fly, and there are shenanigans in the barracks hallway. I mean, you name it. It's there was a guy in our barracks that wore a diaper and beat up another guy. And it's just nonsense. But you don't forget those kinds of things, and you take them away. And then when you meet each other in a room 20 years later, it's like you'd never left off.
Yeah, you're like, hey, let's get that floor buffer out and see who can ride it.
So you can spin the fastest before you fall off.
What the?
I was an MP up at Fort Lewis, up there in Washington, and we used to actually, whenever somebody would go to the convenience store as an MP, all the MP cars had the same key. So we'd run up, unlock their car, and move it like a block or two down the street, and then run off and leave. And we'd sit somewhere, so when we'd watch them come out, they'd be like, and they're not calling anybody to say my car got moved or I lost my car. Yeah. So they're totally like walking around aimlessly looking for their car. until they find it.
Nice.
Well, and you're caught in that space where you're like, is this a prank or did I really screw up?
Right.
And your adrenaline starts, like, you feel your adrenaline in your gut. You're kind of like, oh no, here it goes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hate that feeling.
I'm going to have to call into the captain and be like, sir,
I lost the patrol car.
Yeah.
It was right here. I swear, to you, it was right
we
here.
locked it and everything. I still have the key.
Yeah.
Well, and those are the types of situations, even today in my career, when somebody's like, hey, we need to talk, I automatically have that as a, in E3.
You go to that worst case scenario possible.
I do. I'm like, oh
what
no.
could it possibly be?
Oh God, I'm getting court-martialed. What did I do?
Yes.
It's because I jumped off the third deck with my
Yeah.
my poncho on and I didn't fly, and they're mad at me.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah,
Good times.
and let's be honest, you're other than Warren Buffett, who started to amass his wealth while still serving, most of us aren't becoming wealthy while serving in the military. So you learn to have fun at a very cheap rate.
Right, you do.
Right.
You get very inventive. There's a lot of adventurous minds in the service. I'll
Right.
tell you that.
There's a reason why there's jokes about, the E3 with 26% interest on their,
Mhm.
20-year-old Camaro. So
Yeah. I'll be honest. When I showed up to boot camp and got out of boot camp, I had no idea how much money I was being paid in the military. I never asked that question. I looked at my bank account and I had like $1,500 in there. I'm like, okay, this is the most money I've ever had. Speaking of, you mentioned that Warren Buffett's the fifth richest. Warren and I, we spend, we're on the same list along with Joe Rogan. But I'm right there up on that list. I don't know if you guys knew this about me, but I'm a multi-thousandaire.
yeah.
Nice. There you go.
I have some investments and I like the finer things. Like, I make coffee at my house and it's Colombian and
Yeah.
I have tinted windows on my car. So
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
See,
I will say, Mr. Warren Buffett, the stocks, the things like that, the stock market's not doing very hot today. So if you're an investor, hopefully your stocks are all right.
well,
Crypto's
at my level, I pay other people to.
yeah,
care
you're like, dude,
So-
deal with this and make sure I don't lose money.
I'm like, here's $200. Let's buy some tech stock.
Yeah. Here's $200. I want all the shares of Apple. They're like, no.
yeah.
Sir, that's not even one share of
Yeah,
Apple.
like, nope. I'll give you an apple.
We got this startup
Here-
company, Pear. We're not sure
Yeah.
how it's going to go. So,
We're going to make computers that don't work.
Yeah.
right.
Oh, Apple shares are $141. So $200, I could buy one share. At least one share.
almost 1.25. Yeah.
I will say my Paylocity stock's done very well. So
That's
it's
good.
like at 276 right now. So even though it came down from 299, but
I own Apple stock. I own Google stock. And one of my best performing stocks, because of the longevity, has been Cintas. I used to work there.
ooh, yeah.
But I bought it really low a long time ago. And it just, talk about a company that consistently always goes up.
Yes.
Even with market corrections, it still ends up. So I'm not giving anybody advice, but it's a good
this
stock.
is not financial advice in any
No,
way, shape, or form.
no.
Yeah.
But Cintas does really push their salespeople, so I can see it always continuing to trickle up.
I
So-
will say that I do know that Warren Buffett is one of these where he has a core group of assets that he likes to invest in, and he reinvests. Like he doesn't. I'm sure he's got a pretty decent portfolio. It's spread out pretty well, but the majority of his money goes into a handful of places that he likes to put his money. So.
And when you own property, he's in real estate. That's one of his biggest pieces. And there's some ups and downs in real estate, but they're not making any more property or any more real estate. So there's always going to be a market. I realize people have left offices for the last year and a half, but they're going to come back. And there's not more property to develop. You're always going to need. I read somewhere the other day that in America, we are 5 million new house constructions behind right now.
Yeah,
5 million new home constructions.
Yeah, we are years behind the there's not any sort of deadline, but where they'd like to be.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's kind of interesting as you brought up the housing market stuff, just for the fact that, the wife and I actually looked at building a new house here recently and just selling ours and leaving, being on a gravel road and stuff and moving closer to where all the kids' stuff is at and back into town. And it's going to be like a year down the road before this thing can get built. And so I was like, well, I don't know if it's really worth it at that point, If it's 6 months, I can hang out for 6 months, and go through the building process, but a whole year of the building process, I'm like, I don't know. So,
And then you're like, should we just buy an already built house? And then like they're
Right.
showing you tents underneath a bridge for $600,000, and there's already 15 offers on it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
This one's
Absolutely.
a Coleman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Listen, you're just minutes away from the highway.
Yes, prefab.
Right. Jeez.
So back to the article again. Number 3 is learning from others' experiences. We keep derailing hardcore on today's episode. I will say this. Anybody that has been in the service knows that you are going to meet individuals from all walks of life. You are going to meet individuals from some of the wealthiest families you'll ever know and some of the worst conditions, poorest families this country has to offer, and everybody in between. They're going to be from absolutely every state, from San Diego all the way up to Portland, Maine. It's crazy the amount of people you meet. And Warren said one of the biggest things for him during his military service was learning from everybody else's experiences and seeing what works, what doesn't. And he took those things, put them in his pocket, and moved on with his life, and used those experiences as lessons for himself.
That is absolutely some of the best advice. I give that to my son is if you see somebody else making the mistake, don't make the same mistake. And the worst mistake we make is the one we don't learn from. Those are the things that I say. I say those to my team members too. If we've already screwed it up once, let's not screw it up twice. But I mean, that's just sage advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it absolutely is. And then number 4 is the military is a good life experience. I 100% agree with this. I can't say that I would be for, a forced service, like you turn 18, you have to do 2 years. I'm not necessarily for that. But I think that the more young people that join the military and get in there and just get those experiences under their belt, it is such fantastic life experience. Just, from number 3, you're meeting people that, from walks of life that you probably never would have met before. If you come from one of those high class families, you're probably most times never going to meet somebody that comes from a very low income family that grew up in a huge metropolitan area, and vice versa. That kid from Kansas is never going to meet that guy from the Bronx, and the guy from Florida is never going to meet the kid from Seattle.
Right.
And you just get to learn about each other. You learn about the country, you see things, you travel, and it's, and for most of us that were in the military, it was our first time really away. And we got to, for the first time in our lives, stand on our 2 feet and say, all right, I'll figure this out.
Yep.
It's funny you bring that up. Yeah. Just like, I can tell you, I had friends that were from actually the Bronx, like you just mentioned, Puerto Rico, all the way to Hawaii, Japanese American, and just figuring out what life was like for all of them. And then I'm this kid from the Midwest, grew up in a small town of like 1,000 people. I mean, all completely different experiences. And we all come together. I think that's one of the things that you learn in the military is just how to work with people that aren't like you and how to find those common grounds to be able to have somewhere in some area you can connect on.
There are stats and real data that say that companies and businesses and teams that are more diverse operate or perform better than non-diverse companies and teams and businesses. And I think the same thing applies for the individual. This is a sales pitch for hiring military people, really. And that is that we have diverse experiences. Some of my best friends in the military did not speak the same first language that I spoke. Some of them, I was a middle-class kid from a community that had maybe 2% diversity in my high school graduating class. And then suddenly I show up to boot camp, and then deployments thereafter and other units and elements thereafter that were 40 or 45 or 50% diverse. I was picking up other languages. I was picking up other cultures, music. I mean, you name it. But now as an adult, as I'm inside of business and inside of meetings and shaking hands with people, I've had all those experiences. It's not foreign to me. And then I've been around the world and operated and worked with other people who didn't speak English at all, doing military operations, or even, hailing a cab in Japan and trying to tell them where you need to go. But you get this problem solving sort of mentality from your worldly experiences, not to mention you have these exceptional, diverse experiences with other people from other backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. On to the next article. 28 years ago, Operation Gothic Serpent went down on the streets of Mogadishu. So this is the operation that led to the book and then to the movie Black Hawk Down. So
Wow.
28 years after the incident, 18 veterans who fought in this battle in Mogadishu, Somalia, are being awarded Silver Stars.
Yep.
They're going to be awarded Silver Stars with Valor 28 years after the battle. One of the veterans that was there that day was quoted as saying, "I'd been to combat a couple times. This individual's been in Iraq, Afghanistan, Panama, as well as Somalia. I've seen combat a couple times and a lot of times after Somalia, but I've never seen the heroism. I've never seen the fighting like we saw among the guys on the streets of Mogadishu." This was an absolutely hard fought battle. These individuals were kind of left out there on their own. They were fighting for each other and fighting to try to bring everybody home alive and safe. We all know that didn't happen, but 28 years for these individuals to get that Silver Star. It is the third highest award that the United States has in the military. So
I know. Yeah, I know that there's a lot more to that story than what we saw in the movies, but the way that the movie portrays it is they were supposed to be there was a humanitarian crisis going on. There were warring factions in the streets, and the United States historically has been involved in little conflicts like this all over the place. The reason why this one's so significant is because they thought that they would go in and collect up the warlord and his team. So one of the warring factions, they were going to go essentially kidnap or capture this dude and his team and bring him back. So they went into the heart of the city, and I don't think they realized that the whole population of the city didn't necessarily want them in the heart of the city. And so you had what probably was hundreds or thousands of armed militia essentially just taking to the streets to fight the Americans that were far outnumbered. And they went in for like a 2-hour operation and ended up getting stuck there for days. So they were out of water, they were out of food, you had people injured, they couldn't get vehicles in and out to rescue them and pull them out and extract them, etc.
Yeah, the U.S. force total, not just the individuals that were on the Blackhawks that got shut down, but their support staff was around 200 individuals that were operators in the area. And they estimate around 10 to 12,000 well-armed Somali fighters. So that is, you were talking way outnumbered.
Well, weren't there only like 18 or 19 of them on the ground?
There was 18 of them in the ground.
Yeah.
On the ground, yeah.
So it was, think about that. That's a squad reinforced up against thousands of people.
Yeah.
In a city, unfamiliar city, and everybody in that city is armed and shooting at you.
It went from an operation to quickly a survival. Right. These individuals went from, hey, this is our mission, this is what we're here to do, and then very, very quickly, we need to do every possible thing we can to keep each other alive and get out of here safe.
Do you guys remember whenever they actually went into Somalia and they stormed the beach there? All the news media was sitting there waiting for them and video them as they came on. I don't know if you guys remember that. I remember that as a kid. No. And I was probably like 13 at the time, I think, something like that. I remember thinking, I was like, wow, isn't that like dangerous? Like having like all the news cameras and lights and stuff there as they're like coming on the beach.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that as a 13-year-old kid, but I don't know why that the image watching that on the news stuck in my mind, watching them actually come onto the beach from their boats. And then like everything else that transpired and happened afterwards. So it seems like it was just kind of an interesting operation.
It was
from a lot of different aspects.
Yeah. And I think it changed probably how we elect to jump into those types of missions. I guess they probably called it a humanitarian mission at first.
I think they did.
But after Vietnam, the media has been involved in everything. So like you got to watch the invasion, the battle in Desert Storm on camera. You got to watch the shock and awe on camera. I mean, I remember that very distinctly. I was in Japan and we had a fire drill that night. The fire alarms went off in the building, in our barracks building, at 2:00 in the morning. I don't know what time that was, Iraq time, but we went outside. Building wasn't on fire. Came back in. I'm like, I got to wake up for PT in like an hour or two anyway. So I'm just going to watch TV. Turned on the TV, and I'm watching shock and awe in Baghdad. I'm just watching missiles hit. But it was so funny to me that like you have all these reporters standing a half a mile that way while this city is literally under siege.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it's just that's the way it is now. Everybody wants to see it on camera. Everybody wants to look at the helmet cams. I mean, I can't imagine what the next major conflict will be fought will look like. Like you'll be able to watch it like a video game.
Yeah. Well, if you've ever seen Full Metal Jacket, one of the main characters is a military reporter.
Yeah.
And so
Raptor
you see
Man.
you see in that movie how they're trying to spin certain stories to keep up the morale of the troops in country, because that lack of communication to the outside world is so vast, where today, even if you had no access to a computer or anything like that, because of how the media is covering all these events, once you get a letter from home, old Betsy waiting back home for you is telling you, oh my God, it looks so scary. They're doing this, they're doing that. And this is essentially intel from a civilian because the media is covering it so well.
Right.
It's pretty nuts.
But it's hard at any rate, though. It's always been hard for the media to go back and report combat operations because people don't understand that stuff anyway. They don't understand why we're carrying out missions. So it's very easy to be like, well, why are we even involved there? Why are we even doing that? Okay, I mean, fair question. But if you understand, right now, so Somalia is a great example of there are other humanitarian crises and genocides happening on the continent of Africa in these different countries. And people are like, well, why are we participating there? Or why aren't we participating there? Or are we the world police or are we not the world police? And you got to look back on some of these instances. There was an instance in Africa recently. This is a couple of years ago where some special forces guys got into a gunfight on the move. There's a helmet cam from it. You can go look it up. They got into a gunfight and they had like Land Cruisers they were driving around in. And a bunch of them got killed because they were without support. They were carrying out some sort of operation. I don't know what it was, but it's one of those things where, the media goes out there and sometimes demonizes them for their operations. But then America is saying, well, why aren't we there stopping genocide? So it's kind of this like, tell the right story, tell it the right way.
Yeah.
Mogadishu was quite simply, it was a humanitarian effort to stop the warring factions from killing everybody.
Yeah. Trying to stop war. So it was our last article, but the next article on our list is the Navy has decided it's going to sell 2 aircraft carriers to a shipbreaking company. The price of both aircraft carriers was 1 cent each. So I'm going to put this out there right now. U.S. Navy, if you're looking to sell any more ships, I will buy them for a nickel a piece. You'll make 500 times profit off of what you've done. The USS Kitty Hawk and the USS John F. Kennedy have been sold to International Shipbreaking Limited, based in Brownsville, Texas. So what's going to happen is these ships are going to be towed into a Texas harbor. They'll be broken down and then sold for scrap.
I would like to outbid Tim, and I'm going to offer 15 cents per aircraft carrier.
Now, if I would get my hands on one of these aircraft carriers, not only am I going to live on it, I'm going to then start trying to buy jets. I'll buy a jet for a dime, maybe a quarter. I need some. Here's some landing crafts.
Here's what's going to happen. You're not going to be able to find jets because they're all sitting on freighters that are sitting out in the Pacific Ocean now doing circles. Yeah. And then you're not going to be able to hire anybody because nobody's going to come to work for you.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you what. Now, if you buy that Kitty Hawk for 20 cents, you're probably going to have a little bit of trouble getting the boiler to work. But good news, my cousin used to be a boiler maker on that. And I think he knows how to make that thing work for you. So you've got that there. So you'll have heat. So you'll be good to go, man.
You bring in your friends. Awesome. That's what you do.
Exactly.
It's like the movie Battleship where they had to fight the aliens and they had to go get on that old battleship in Hawaii. And there were a bunch of older guys who had operated the battleship. They're like, I need you to operate the gun. And these guys are like, yeah, let's go do it. You just got to get your friends. They're not going to get paid.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Like, we can rent rooms out there.
Now we're just going to travel the world.
But
that's not a bad idea, Tim. I mean, we can rent rooms out, man. Maybe make a cruise out of it. Get guys on there that used to be in the Navy. Like, I just want the experience again for a week.
Hey, you guys can come cruise, but you also have to work.
Right.
Because, again, back to that conversation, people aren't coming to work right now, and there's a staffing shortage. Brian, I think last time we were talking to you, you were on here. Was this last year, I think?
That would have been back like in February.
Okay, so you were in a job transition. Tell us where you are now.
So I'm with Paylocity now. It's a human capital management company, similar to like ADP or Paychex, Paycom. Those are all our competitors. And so we have a suite of software in the human resources information systems. And that's what we do is we create and sell that software and support companies. A lot of it's mid-sized businesses. And so it's a great company. They've taken great care of me since I've been there. Gosh, I mean, I'm wearing one of their shirts now, and I don't know how much swag they've sent me since I've been there at the company in like 8 months, but it seems like every few weeks I get another box in the mail of a coffee mug or a shirt or something like that. And then it's just a great group of people, man. It was a great place to land. It's one of actually, was it a few weeks ago, Yahoo had him as one of the top 20 places to work in the nation. So it's a great company, great organization, do a great job taking care of their people. So I can't say enough about it. And I just feel like I got lucky landing there when I was going through the transition. But I think, what I did though, whenever I did end up having my position eliminated over at my last organization, I just employed what I did whenever I made my transition off of active duty. And that was a little bit something different than what everybody else I think has typically done. But I went back to my roots and just created a tracker for myself, tracked every place I not only just applied to, but interviewed with, when those dates were that I had interviews. That way every morning I could pull up my tracker and see, hey, this is success that I'm having, this is attraction I'm having. And that way I could also track, was I making it to the first interview but not past that? If so, what am I doing in that first interview? Or am I not getting interviews, changing something on my resume? And so just using that tracker to be able to figure out, am I making progress through the process? And if not, can I reevaluate what I'm doing and then be able to continue to progress forward? And at the end of the day, it took me 5 weeks to land a new role and start. I sent out about 150 job applications, did about 28 job interviews, and interviewed with somewhere around 18 different companies. So I had 3 offers at the end of the day. So, tracking the stats and those numbers and that data, it was huge for keeping me motivated and keeping me in a positive headspace and not just getting down every day.
Right. We were talking about this before we went live, and that was that you probably were in a little bit of a panic mode when you had to make a decision. You were finding something new, but right now in this year is the time to have been in that situation, right? Because it is, especially as a talent acquisition professional, now is the time to be that right now. So I think, although it was a bit of panic mode, and you and I had multiple conversations about that back then, I'm glad to hear that you've landed somewhere and now you're actually competitive for other things where you're getting offers, or you said you had 3 offers.
Yeah, I did. And that was awesome. So, and I think a lot of it's just going back to, we have that fear moment of, whether we lost a job or we're transitioning out. And I think one of the things we don't think about doing is going back to doing what the military always tells us to do, track the data, right? Track the data, backwards plan some. As long as you backwards plan off of where you're trying to target in on being at, and then you track the data moving forward, you can make those adjustments as you need to. And so, I've stumbled upon that method. It's just kind of what I did when I first started coming out of the military, because I had spent so many years in recruiting that I was just used to tracking data.
Right.
It was one of those things I was just used to doing, and I just employed it in the same process for finding a position, and it just ended up being something that worked really well for me. So.
Well, along those lines, tracking data, I've always said this, that no matter what you're doing, whether you're searching for a job or executing your job, if you track the data and show your success and show your work, that is 90% of being able to say, I'm successful, of being able to make the case that if you ever have to defend your job or go to another job interview and say, here's what I've done, I think people leave out data. Resumes love to see, or managers love to see on a resume. I say resumes love to see because it's something that belongs on a resume. Resume loves to see dollar amounts and people led and numbers and crunching all the stuff. But quite frankly, if you can bring in, my wife has a brag book. She hasn't switched jobs in many years, but she has a brag book, and it's like this thick photo album full of all the letters of recommendation she's ever had, awards, stats, everything. So if she ever sits down for an interview she's in sales, and somebody's like, well, how much do we pay you, or what are you worth? She could be like, I've generated hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars and whatever, and here's all my stats. Because it's not just your word anymore. Now you're like, I've done this, and it represents X amount of dollars, and it represents X amount of widgets made, et cetera, et cetera. So keeping stats and keeping records, no matter how you cut it, is one of the best things you can do in your career.
Yeah, I think it was Jay-Z possibly that said it, that men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. So yeah, if you can get your hands on the numbers, I think I might be misquoting. I don't know. I think it was.
No, I mean,
Jay-Z. It was a
you know,
rapper.
somebody, one of his friends also said, if it don't make dollars, it don't make
It don't
sense.
make sense. Yeah.
And this is it's sage advice from the likes of Warren Buffett, and Jay-Z is also an exceptionally wealthy
Yeah.
person.
Yes.
He's now in that billionaire club himself, I believe.
And I've always heard he's one of the hardest working people, or was one of the hardest working people in the industry. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you listen to his music or whatever. He's right.
I will say this. I will say this about Jay-Z. Once he got to a certain age or whatever, and maybe it was less about the music. I know that he started to make money off of investments. He was buying art, buying real estate, things of that nature. And there were younger people that were like, why am I going to listen to this guy? And he had a song where he's talking about he bought a painting or whatever, and 2 years later it's almost double the value. And he says, I can't wait to give this to my kids. And I was like, that's a fantastic lesson, because you're teaching them how to build wealth.
Right.
It's something you're not taught in school.
That's a lesson that I learned from reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
It's not a lesson that I didn't already know, but I've talked about this. In my family growing up, we never really talked about money and compound interest and assets and liabilities and things like that. And this is really a conversation for us to have with Tim Kessler on the line. But and for those who don't know who Tim is, Tim's been with us a couple of times, and he's a financial guy. But it's absolutely true. If I learned one thing, if I took away one thing from that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it is that you take your income and you use that to invest in other things. And then you buy your toys and your cars and your vacation houses with whatever money you've made from your other income sources. Yeah. You don't take your primary income and spend it. So, if you're a one income type, if you have one income stream, then fine. That's how you spend. That's how you go buy your car and you buy your boat and do whatever. And if you make lots of money, then okay, fine. Spend it on whatever, but you have to have investments. And this is where they say a lot of people our age, in our age group, or people younger than us, are not being taught about finance, because they're in high school. They're not teaching them this. In college, maybe if they pursue it. But the fact is that you don't have to make a lot of money to end up wealthy on the back end. You don't have to make a lot of money in salary to end up with a several $1 million retirement fund. You just have to be smart with your money. And there are assets and liabilities. An asset is something that gains value: property, real estate, art, right? Depending on what it is. A liability is a car, a boat, a telephone. People who are like, the new phone's coming out, I'm gonna go buy it for $1,200. What?
Yeah, I'll buy the one that's 2 generations old now, and
it's not worth it. It's not doing anything. It's not.
What are they on now? Like the 13? Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I saw somebody the other day walking around with something that still looked like the iPhone 5. So
I
was like, oh, hey, probably because that thing's still working for him.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a smart person right there.
I have a generation of iPhone here that is what feels like 100 years old. It's still the little tiny one. It fits in my hand. It's several years old. And don't get me wrong. I invest in Apple because I know people are going to buy the stuff. But frankly, for me, I'm making money, and this is the other lesson that I learned. Make money off of other people paying for the things. Don't make money off of you paying for the things. So in the idea of owning a rental property, for example, somebody else is paying your mortgage. And then when you sell it in 10 or 15 or 20 years, you sell it for $1 million or whatever you sell it for. That's $1 million that you essentially didn't pay for.
Yeah.
And then, to Warren Buffett's thing, to his credit, you reinvest your profits and you don't have to pay taxes on them. You reinvest. So I sell my $1 million home and go buy a $2 million home that somebody else is renting out now, or some other entity is leasing space on. They're paying my $2 million mortgage. And then in 5 more years, I sell that for $2 million and I go buy a $3 million property. And I'll never have to pay taxes on the gains of that property as long as I continue to reinvest it.
Absolutely.
It's how you make it's oversimplified version, but that's how you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, I only had those couple articles pulled up, but I will say that on the sidebar of one of these articles, a fantastic headline caught my eye, and I need to get this one in. Special ops troops hunkered down in California airport hangar after nighttime ninja attack.
What?
Yes, absolutely.
Are you reading Duffel Blog or?
No, 100% on military.com. A sword-wielding man dressed as a ninja attacked several special operations soldiers who were training at a California airport, reportedly forcing them to shelter in a hangar and inflicting wounds that require stitches.
What?
Yeah, I swear to God.
How does this even happen?
This happened in the Mojave Desert, about 100 miles north of Los Angeles, around 1 a.m. on September 18th. Let me get down here in the article. So it's unclear from the records whether the man was an actual practitioner of ninjutsu. First off, it says in the article.
Don't want to give ninjas a bad name here.
This is crazy. So a staff sergeant is on guard, at the front gate. An individual dressed in full ninja garb walks up and says, "Do you know who I am?" To which the soldier replied, "No." "Do you know where my family is?" the black-clad man then asked. The staff sergeant again answered, "No." The person in the ninja garb began to slash the soldier, striking his phone, his knee, and his leg. So that is where the stitches come in. The staff sergeant then took off running in the opposite direction. He hopped a fence and got himself into an admin building where apparently there was a captain, at which point 911 was called. The individual started punching and kicking at the doors, punching at windows. He found a large piece of asphalt, threw one of the windows. It struck the captain in the back. I'm assuming he also was injured. But yeah, I mean, man, why can't that stuff happen? Why couldn't this have happened to me? I'm out on an operation out in 29 Palms, and here comes this goofy son of a gun dressed in ninja garb
in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, me and this boy are going to go a couple rounds.
Right.
Oh, man.
So the first thing that comes to mind is why is this guy not dead right now? Because every training operation we ever did, especially if we had weapons there, we had people with bullets. And if you had a guard, I'm assuming if this person was guarding the operational area, this dude may have been armed, maybe not, but we were always armed. Everywhere I went, I was guarding an airfield in Australia. We had rounds in our weapons because there were aircraft on the field.
I don't know. It's middle of the night though, so maybe he was the guy that got in trouble and had to pull like the nighttime guard shift, but like they weren't confident enough in giving him rounds.
Private pot.
Yes. Like, here's a weapon, but we're not going to give you bullets for it because we don't want to go to the AHA to get that stuff either. Yeah, we don't trust you with it, but you got guard duty tonight.
Yeah,
we're in the Mojave Desert. What's going to happen?
Yell for help if you need help.
Right.
Well, what was it? The other guys, they gave him a wooden pistol and a rape whistle.
Right. Yeah. So this has to be like it's some Lance Corporal. It's some E3 who's fed up right now, and he's like, I'm gonna go mess with these guys, and they're not gonna do anything about it.
Yeah. I will say, what made me really start to laugh at that is the polypropylene, the long underwear we were given in the Marine Corps. I also, out on town, I bought a hood. So it literally it looked like a whole ninja outfit, essentially. And there would be this thing where, if we were doing some wintertime training exercises, that first night out in the field, especially for all the new guys that had never seen this before, I'd slide out of the tent and I'd change into my polypropylene ninja outfit and I'd come bursting in and, karate chopping people. I didn't have a sword, I wasn't that cool, but I mean,
I'm sure they had them for sale at the PX.
Yeah, like wow. I can't imagine being on a training exercise and some ninja starts swinging.
So Tam, I think we did some training. We were OPFOR in the jungle in Japan for somebody's operation, and we built ghillie suits.
Homemade ghillie suits.
These guys knew that there was going to be OPFOR, but they had no idea that it was going to be
how serious we were going to take. Yeah,
this. Like I think they were like admin guys doing a field op, so like they just weren't ready for. We were combat engineers. A lot of us had deployed with like infantry units, and we'd had all this experience behind us, and. So here we are in our homemade ghillie suits, like shredded burlap and stuff like that. I walked up to a dude in the jungle, or in a fighting position, like a machine gun hole, and he's staring right at me, and I'm walking right toward him. I'm not kidding. I'm 10 feet away, and he doesn't see me. Like I'm all painted up, and I'm just kind of like walking real slow. I made it into his hole, and I was like, "You guys are dead," and it terrified them. You guys are dead. Don't even pull the trigger. Don't say anything. You're dead. But I had to have terrified these guys. I don't think they were expecting it, and they were probably like, "Send me back to my office,"
Yeah. Stop it! Or you're not gonna get your paycheck.
Right.
Dang
Okay.
it.
All right. No, you're right.
Yeah.
I'll go.
Good job, guys. Yeah. Very well done. Very well
keep
done.
up the good work.
Yeah. Like I said, I really wasn't planning on another news article, but off of the Black Hawk article, that little headline caught my eye, and I thought, man, I have to look at this and see what exactly happened, because I just know, if a ninja, air quotes here, was trying to attack us during an operation, it would have been a whole lot of fun.
Do you think that there's like a council of actual like ninja practitioners who are reading this story somewhere? They're like, who is this?
Who has brought great shame upon the ninjutsu practitioners?
They have tarnished our reputation.
Yeah.
You talk about ninjutsu, and it keeps making me think of the little Lego show that my kid watches.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The Lego ninjas.
Ninjago or something.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's what this was. There's a council of elders somewhere in, I don't know, wherever they are. Who we're assembling the council.
Yes.
Which among you was it?
Yes. Who attacks U.S. troops in middle of night?
Right. And it's the private pile version of
Yeah.
the ninjas. It's like the guy in the corner.
Two private piles meet.
Yeah.
They're like, actually, that's why we didn't give him a real sword. We gave him this old rusty sword, but it turns out now the guy he slashed has stitches and tetanus.
Tetanus, yeah.
That's how he defeats his enemy. It's a long, slow battle with lockjaw.
You will get tetanus.
Does anybody else here wonder if they bought the ninja sword at the PX? So, because like every PX I've seen like has like these like ninja swords and everything else, or at least a store that sells them or something in there.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, who buys this stuff, right? But apparently people do, because like they've got it in like every PX. So
I wonder if
ninja.
he swung the sword at him and it hit him, and then the staff sergeant's like, "Wow, that really hurt. What are you doing?"
Don't do that again. Stop.
Yeah. To the staff sergeant's defense, I will say the last thing you're expecting while you're on guard is somebody to come in and start striking you with a sword.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then you got to wonder,
ride up
like,
on a horse,
Right.
I didn't hear fixed bayonets. Like
the one a guy playing coconuts behind him, you know what I mean, making a horse sound.
he's got his friend there, and he's dressed like a British redcoat.
Yes.
And then there's like a pirate behind him. It's like this whole cast of characters.
this is a weird YMCA video shoot or something. Like, it's new characters. Okay.
Halloween's at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And then it's like, actually, that was your birthday, stripper, and it was your birthday, and you just forgot while you were on duty. We were surprise!
Yes.
Surprise.
Oh, guys, you should tell me before this stuff happens. Oh, he seemed pretty mad, and he hit me with his sword.
That's great.
All I needed to do was give him a couple $. Yeah, that's interesting. So, just be careful out there, everybody. Watch out for ninjas. They have
Tip them
swords.
if you see them.
Yep. Tip the ninja. Yeah, next time you see a ninja, tip them.
Yeah.
Be real nice.
Anybody with a sharp object.
Right.
Yeah, next time I go to Hibachi, I'll just start throwing dollars at the guy.
You never know. You never know who it was.
I mean, he's got sharp things, and he's spinning and flipping. I don't
skills.
want one of those. Yeah, I don't want one of those to hit me. Here's a couple of bucks right off the top. I trust you.
Right. That's right.
So, Brian, we didn't really get into too much about you today, but congratulations on the new job.
Thank you.
As timing goes, like Matt said, you picked a heck of a time to get into that cycle of transitioning into a new role. So,
I agree.
I'm glad to hear that you've found a spot you feel happy with, and I hope you continue to grow in that role. And we'll have to have you back on and not talk about 5 news articles. We'll actually get into you a little bit more next time.
That's fine. That's fine, man. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on, guys. Maybe we'll find another ninja article. Who knows?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, next time I come up with a nice ninja article,
yes.
Hey, we got to reach out to Brian. We're gonna save this one until we can get him on. So, but for everybody out there listening and checking us out, we appreciate you very much. Give us a like, a rating, review. As a matter of fact, you can now listen to the podcast live on YouTube. And not only live, you can go back and listen to old episodes as well. I've put the podcast up on our YouTube page. You can check that out. You can check us out on all the other major social media platforms, as well as all the podcast platforms. Like I said earlier, like, rate, subscribe, tell a friend, tell a relative, share the show with them. We would appreciate that greatly. And until next time, we'll be right back here on